Comforting someone who is grieving is not about becoming an expert in grief psychology. It is not about delivering a flawless speech that lifts their spirits like the ending of a movie. And it is not about fixing what can't be fixed, because grief is not a thing that can be fixed. Comforting someone who's grieving is about using your pre-existing strengths, things you already have inside you, to support someone you care about who is in pain. Hi there, Grief Growers, and welcome back to another episode of Grief Grower. I am so grateful to be here with you today, as always. If you have been growing alongside me in my work for a while, welcome back. And if you are new to me and my work, hello. My name is Shelby Forsythia. I am a grief coach, a 3-time author, and the founder of Life After Loss Academy, where I have helped dozens of grieving people stop feeling lost, stuck, broken, and alone, and start building lives that they genuinely love from the lives that loss forced them to live. This includes not only death-related losses, but also losses like divorce and breakup, major diagnosis, and every single other loss that changes our lives. Here on Grief Grower, we believe that grief is not something to get over. It is something that we grow with and alongside, and that when we stop treating grief like a problem to be solved and start treating it like an invitation to live more deeply, we can create meaningful lives that are rich with the memories that we carry, the struggles that we faced, and the precious awareness of what it is to be right here and right now. Today on the show, we are diving into the Supporting Someone series once again with episode 6. So altogether, I have given you 6 episodes on what to say and do to support someone who is grieving. But before we get into it, just a quick reminder that release day for my 3rd book, Of Course I'm Here Right Now, 3 actually helpful things to say to someone who's grieving, is coming up in less than 2 months on March 31st. This little guidebook teaches you how to support someone who's grieving in your life with the best free tool that any of us has, and that is our words, so that you will never enter another conversation with a grieving friend, family member, coworker, client, wondering, what on earth do I say in this situation in order to comfort them? As an author, pre-orders are always immensely helpful when it comes to getting the book seen by the powers that be and bookstores and every other place that would like to stock this book. So you can find a link to pre-order. Of course, I'm Here Right Now, 3 actually helpful things to say to someone grieving in the show notes for this episode. If you have already pre-ordered the book, thank you so incredibly much. You can submit your receipt number, no photos required. All you have to do is type it in from your local bookstore, from Amazon, from Bookshop, from Barnes & Noble, on my website, which is shelbyforsythia.com, to access the free 6-week book club that is kicking off April 14th. In that book club, we will read, Of Course I'm Here Right Now, chapter by chapter over 6 weeks. There's 6 chapters in the book, so we will read 1 chapter a week, and we will discuss it together. We will talk about scenarios, how to use the phrases in real life, and what to say to someone who is grieving in your life, even if that person who is grieving is you. Once again, this book club kicks off in early April, so make sure you have the book in your hands and submit your receipt number on my website by then, and you can find the link to do that in the show notes as well. And last thing I'll say, if you would like to celebrate the launch of this book with me, I would be so honored to see you at 2 launch parties. The first one is taking place the eve before the book comes out here in Chicago on March 30th. When you get your ticket, the book is included, so you get the book in your hands before the rest of the world, the night before it's released to the world, which is so fun and so exciting. And the second launch event, if you are not located in or around Chicago, is happening on March 31st on YouTube. So no matter where in the world you live, you can tune in to hear more about the clients and interactions that inspired this grief book, and I will also read some excerpts from the book live during the launch party. And of course, the replay of that virtual launch party will be made available if you cannot attend live, because I want to honor the fact that so many of my clients and students and friends and family members are in different time zones of the world, and yet we are all either grieving or supporting someone through grief, sometimes both at the same time. So I really want to make this launch party and sort of the thesis of this book available to you whenever you would like to watch it. You can save your spot for both of these launch parties at the link in the show notes. Okay, let's get into Supporting Someone series number 6, and this is How to Comfort Someone Who is Grieving. This is inspired by my new book, Of Course I'm Here Right Now, 3 powerful ways to show up with care. And the reason I wrote this episode and wanted to bring it to you is because odds are, whether you're grieving or you consider yourself not grieving in this season, you are probably listening because someone in your life is experiencing a loss. That person may be you, that person may be someone that you know. Someone just died, or a physical or mental health diagnosis just changed everything about your life, their life. Maybe a marriage or a relationship has ended. Maybe a future that someone was counting on has just poofed into the ether. And now you are standing next to a grieving person's pain and thinking, what on earth do I say? What if I make it worse? And how do I support someone who is grieving when I don't know what to do? And as I was writing this book and as I talk to people who are curious about how to support someone who's grieving, they often have three main motivations. They want to be a good friend to someone who's grieving. I want to feel as if I can support them, and I want to be perceived as a good friend, and I want to act in the behavior that a good friend would have. I want to know what to say and do. I want to have the words that are genuinely comforting, specific to this moment. And sort of on a larger perspective, on a worldwide level, I want to live in a society where people are there for each other when hard things happen. And oftentimes these three motivators, I want to be a good friend, I want to have the tools, and I want to live in a world where everyone has the tools to support someone and be a good friend when someone in the world is grieving. These are all driving people who want to comfort someone who's grieving. So if this is you, I feel you like raising your hand in the headphones of this podcast episode. I see you and I hear you. What I want you to do, if you are spiraling of like, what do I say? I don't want to screw it up. I really want to make sure that I am comforting someone who's grieving in a way that actually feels good and okay to them. I want you to take a breath and know this. Comforting someone who is grieving is not about becoming an expert in grief psychology. It is not about delivering a flawless speech that like lifts their spirits like the ending of a movie. And it is not about fixing what can't be fixed, because grief is not a thing that can be fixed. Comforting someone who's grieving is about using your pre-existing strengths, things you already have inside you, to support someone you care about who is in pain. And after more than 10 years of working with grieving people and listening very carefully to what actually helps versus what harms, I have found that comforting someone who is grieving comes down to three core ways of showing up. And these are all based on strengths that I imagine you already have somewhere inside of you. And some people are better at one of these three than others. So see which one sounds the most like you, and then we're going to look at each of them individually and get even more detail. First, your strength may be validating what they're feeling. Second, your strength may be remaining present over time. Or third, your strength might be gently reminding the person who is grieving that this moment exists within the context of a larger life. And if you are not sure which of these three strengths most describes you, pause right now, pause this podcast episode, and look in the show notes for this episode, unless you're driving, in which case wait until you get where you're going, and then look in the show notes to take the free 2-minute quiz that I have created called What is Your Grief Supporter Strength? Once you have your results, come back to listen more about each grief supporter type, and we're going to get into them now. What I want you to take with you as we continue this episode is that comforting someone after a loss is a lot easier and less pressure cooker filled than most people think. And it does not require you to be a therapist, which we've already mentioned, but you also don't have to know how to make a casserole or have the money to send a bunch of flowers or groceries to their home. So if you want to meaningfully support someone grieving, let's explore these three different types of strengths that you can already have as a grief supporter that you can hone and perfect and add words to comfort someone who is grieving. And you can figure out what type of grief supporter you are, what your innate gifts and strengths are, and use those to your advantage the next time someone you know is in crisis. Okay, the first type is a comforter who supports someone grieving by validating their emotions. And this is important because grief is very disorienting. It can make the person going through it feel irrational or reactive or foggy or angry or exhausted or overwhelmed, a whole plethora of things. And on top of all that, so many grieving people have told me in more than 10 years of grief coaching that they're doing grief wrong, or they're afraid that they're crazy, or they think that nobody really understands what it is they're going through. They wonder if they're too emotional or not emotional enough, or they're talking about the loss too much or not talking about it enough, or crying about the loss too much or not crying enough to prove that they care about who or what they lost. So one of the most stabilizing things that you as a comforter can offer them is simple emotional validation. And what validation means, if you're not familiar with this term, is that you help a grieving person's emotions make sense, not in a clinical way. You don't have to break it down for them from a psychology perspective, and not with really long explanations, but just in a human way. So here's some examples of what validation, emotional validation, looks like in practice. So when someone says, I can't even focus at work, you might respond, well, of course you can't focus at work the way you used to. You're grieving. Or when they say, I'm so angry and I don't even know why, you might say, that makes sense to me. There's a lot that feels unfair about loss. You are not analyzing them, you are not correcting them, and you are not redirecting them toward like gratitude or positivity or growth. Instead, you are communicating one simple, powerful statement. Your reaction to grief is normal. And this matters because grieving people are constantly exposed to this subtle pressure to look on the bright side or to move forward or to be like everyone else. And so when you validate instead of minimize their emotions, you create emotional safety within your relationship. And in my free quiz where you can discover your personal grief support strength, one of the supporter types is called the perceptive permission granter. These are the emotional validators. This is your innate strength. So maybe you naturally think or say things like, your feelings make sense. I can see how you got there. I hear you. I believe you. People who are emotional validators or perceptive permission granters, because I had to come up with a fun name, they do not try to fix what a griever is feeling. They legitimize it, sometimes even offering evidence. And here is what is important. You do not need to be an emotions person or a feelings person to do this well, to grant someone emotional permission to have their feelings. You do not need a degree in counseling, and you do not need a huge emotional vocabulary, and you also do not need to cry alongside them. Again, you do not have to come up with any further proof than simply you are standing alongside them, whether literally or virtually or over text message or however you're communicating with them, and just reflecting back what you are observing to be true about them. And what this does is wraps their heart in this unspoken comfort that however they're feeling about their loss is normal and okay. Underneath every validating phrase, I see you, I hear you, I believe you, that makes sense to me, of course you would feel that way, is the same foundation. You are granting your grieving person permission to feel over and over and over again. And that is the gift of the perceptive permission granter. So if you think you might be the perceptive permission granter, take the quiz and see if that is your type. Let's get into the second type of comforter, or the second way that you can comfort someone who is grieving. Number 2 is comforting by being a consistent presence. Something that a lot of my grieving clients and students say often is, everyone showed up at first, right when the loss happened, and then they all disappeared. Society writ large, I'm kind of speaking in generalizations, tends to rally around fresh loss, like the thing just happened. There are meal trains and texts and flowers and an outpouring of sympathy, and then slowly, or sometimes quickly, life resumes and people go, as grievers often put it, back to their normal lives. And while this sort of grief ghosting by friends and family is rarely intentional, it makes grieving people feel like no one truly cares about them or their loss because no one is willing to go the distance of time. For many grieving people, it is another sort of loss to be left alone to deal with the pain of grief on top of grieving another already painful loss. So for instance, my person died, and now I'm being abandoned by all my friends and family. So if you want to be a really good grief supporter to someone grieving, learn how to stick around. And sticking around does not mean hovering or bombarding your griever with daily, how are you? What are you doing? How are you feeling today? Texts. It doesn't mean forcing deep conversations. It means maintaining gentle but ongoing contact. So this could look like a short text that says, no need to respond, just thinking of you today. Or verbal acknowledgement that a grief anniversary, like a death day or a birthday, is coming up. So like, I know your dad's birthday's coming up. Are you doing anything special to honor him? Or I know that the anniversary of your divorce is coming up. Are you doing anything to commemorate the day? Or are you interested in taking a day off if you're in someone like a management position or a friend or something who could cover for them? You could offer an invitation to walk with no pressure to join, or to go see a movie, or to go to a very low stakes restaurant reservation or a concert or something similar. You could even just have a willingness to sit in the same room with someone who is grieving or on a phone call without needing to fill the silence. So many grieving people say, I just want someone to show up, to be there, and this is often what they mean. These gestures of ongoing contact are all important because we live in a society that doesn't make space for grief after the crater, the initial impact. When you choose to keep acknowledging grief over the long haul, you communicate to your grieving person, your loss is still important to me. So in my free quiz, which once again, you can find it in the show notes for this episode, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can find it in the description. One of the quiz results is called the Compassionate Companion. If you are a compassionate companion, you understand instinctively that grief is not a thing that happens one time. There's not just the moment the crater is created. You recognize that what comforts most is often consistency, showing up as the person who is dealing with this crater that blew this giant hole in their lives, slowly pieces things back together. To accompany a griever's heart over time, you don't have to say profound things. In fact, you honestly don't really need to say much at all. It is the checking in, and the checking in over time, that is the most important. Said another way, you do not have to spend a lot of time with a grieving person. You just have to keep showing up over time. Your continued presence in their life communicates something very powerful, and that is one of my favorite phrases, whether you say it out loud or not. I have not forgotten that you are grieving. Many people worry that they will say the wrong thing and make things worse for the person they're trying to comfort, and so they pull back. But for most grievers, silence from others or stepping away hurts more than imperfect words. So if you are someone who does not love like long heart-to-heart conversations, showing up over time in small ways might actually be your strength. You might be the steady one in their lives, the one who keeps checking in, the one who sends the short, simple message without requiring anything in return. And your reliability as the compassionate companion lets them know that it's okay that they are still grieving and that they are still remembering and processing and being changed by their loss. At the core of every check-in that you have with them of I'm still here, you demonstrate that you're one of the ones who gets it. Grief does not vanish with time, and neither do you. And what a gift that is to somebody who's grieving. Okay, let's get into the last way that you can comfort someone who's grieving here, and this is by gently providing perspective. This is not everyone's gift in life after loss, but for people who this is their gift, they are really, really good at it. And let me say more on what I mean by gently providing perspective. Grief can make the pain of this present moment feel permanent, especially when a permanent loss like a death or a life-changing diagnosis is the thing that they're mourning. The intensity can convince someone grieving that because this is how it is right now, this is how it's going to be forever. When you carefully place your grieving person's pain in some kind of context, you create breathing room in their brain and sometimes a shred of hope that their suffering is not all there is. To be very clear, this does not mean saying, it will get better, you can try for kids again, you'll find love again. It does not mean pointing out silver linings or asking them to look on the bright side. And it really, really, really doesn't mean rushing them towards joy or happiness. This means offering perspective, means acknowledging how hard this specific, unique moment is, while also anchoring it in time. Almost like tying an anchor to the reality of right now and saying, yep, this is true, this is heavy, this is real. And also, this is not all there is. So people who are good at this flavor of comforting, say things like, right now, everything feels really heavy. Or, this season is incredibly difficult. Or, I can see how hard you're trying in this chapter. These small phrases, these prepositional phrases of right now, this season, this chapter, all these time-oriented sayings, they do something really, really important. They frame your grieving friend's pain as real and intense and valid, but also not endless. In my free grief supporter quiz, What's Your Grief Supporter Strength? This supporter type is called the narrative navigator. These are the people who can hold two truths at once. This is really effing awful, and this is not the entirety of your existence. You do not need to be poetic to be a narrative navigator. You do not need to predict someone's healing timeline. You are not promising anything about their future. You are simply naming what is happening in a way that prevents the pain from swallowing or consuming their whole entire rest of their life. And for someone who feels consumed by grief, that subtle reframing, whether they recognize it or not, can be incredibly stabilizing. Again, as I said in the beginning of this episode, you do not need to be a therapist to offer this. You do not need specialized training. You just need to be thoughtful about your language. So instead of saying, it won't always hurt this bad, you'll have future kids, you'll find love again, it's okay, blah, 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 it'll all work out in the end, you say instead, right now, I can see how much this hurts. And your framing of this moment in time as just that, a moment right now in this season for the moment, shows them that it is possible to honor and be present to the grief that is happening right here, right now, while also acknowledging that the here and now is always changing. Grief may never end, but it does change shape, and pain, while it is very real, is rarely a permanent state of being. What I really want to drive home as you go out into the world after this episode is that you do not have to become someone different in order to comfort someone who's grieving. I think so many people hesitate to support someone who's grieving, a friend, a family member, a coworker, a neighbor, a client, because they believe that it requires a special personality or formal training. They think things like, I'm not good with emotions, or I never know what to say, or I don't want to mess this up. But supporting someone in grief, and I believe this like to the core of who I am, is less about charisma and education and more about your relationship to them and their pain. And, frankly, your innate comforting gifts, and I think we all have them. Are you willing to validate their feelings instead of dismissing them? That is one kind of gift. Are you willing to remain present instead of disappearing? That is another kind of gift. Or are you willing to frame the moment gently instead of forcing fake optimism? That is another kind of gift. That's it. That is all it takes to comfort someone who is grieving in your midst. The world does not need more people who are trying to get grief right. It needs more steady humans who are willing to show up thoughtfully exactly as they already are. So here is your next step, whether you are grieving or supporting someone who is. You are listening to this episode because you want to support someone well. Please take the quiz. What is your grief supporter strength? It is free. It takes less than 2 minutes. You will discover your natural way of comforting someone who is in pain. You will see how your personality can be an asset, not a liability, in the midst of loss, and you will walk away with practical guidance that is tailored to how you uniquely show up for the people in your life who are suffering. And in case you haven't already guessed, this quiz is inspired by my new book, Of Course I'm Here Right Now, which goes deeper into what supportive presence actually looks like in everyday conversations using words and words alone, these powerful little magical free things to validate, accompany, and offer time anchoring to all of the grieving people in your life, whether they are facing a death, divorce, diagnosis, bus splashed them with water and ruined their dress, all the way to their sister just died in the hospital. Once again, you do not need to overhaul who you are to comfort someone who is grieving. You do not need to memorize a script, and you do not need to rescue any single grieving person from their pain. You just need to show up in a way that says, your feelings make sense, validator, I am still here, accompanier, or this moment, as hard as it is a moment in time, contextualizer. These 3 ways are how you comfort someone who is grieving. Thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of Grief Grower. I cannot wait to hear what type of grief supporter you are. That's all for this episode of Grief Grower. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're looking for grief support beyond this show, you can find free workshops, articles, and my new What's Your Grief Supporter Strength quiz at shelbyforsythia.com/links. And if you'd like to get support from me for your unique loss experience, join us in Life After Loss Academy, my online course and community. As a student, I'll walk you through my 5-step grief framework for rebuilding after loss, and you can get live coaching from me every single week to answer your questions. Replays are always available if you can't attend live. It's just $33 a month to join, or $22 a month if you're a marginalized or financially stressed griever, and you can cancel at any time. If this podcast felt validating, comforting, educational, or otherwise helpful to you, please subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And be sure to share Grief Grower with a friend, because you never know what someone you love is going through. Grief Grower is hosted by me, Shelby Forsythia, and the theme music is by our very own Addie Goldstein. Until next time, I see you. I am so proud of you and the work that you're doing in the world, and I love you. Because even through grief, we are growing.